Okay, so welcome everyone. We'll start as usual with a little invocation. So if you want to just close your eyes for a moment, just preparing and tuning ourselves to receiving the knowledge. So if you know the prayers, join me. Om. 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 Sahana bhavato sahano bhunaktu sah viryam karavavahai tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Acharya Paryant Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So welcome everyone. Slowly open your eyes when you're ready. So today we're going to be talking about the mysteries of the mind, and the aim is to understand how the mind works. And why do we need to know how the mind works is that once we know how the mind works, then we can do something about it to help us achieve peace of mind. So today I'm not going to concentrate on the practical part about how we do it, about the practices, but today I'm only going to talk about the principles of things. And then in our next interactive session is when we're going to talk about the practical, about what can we actually do about this. So so to understand the mind, it's quite elaborate, and it's really interesting to kind of understand and break it into various bits about our thoughts, to analyze our thoughts and where they're coming from and why we have certain tendencies and all that kind of thing. So we're breaking this whole mind field, if you like, into the mind, the intellect, and something which is called the ego, and then the subliminal imprints, and the Sanskrit name for that is vasanas, and then also the interactions of all these together to explain why we think what we think and how our thoughts happen. So so there is a lot of text there, I'm afraid. I mean, you don't have to read it, you can just listen, you can close your eyes. So I'm going to start with the Western categorization of mind, if you like, just to get to kind, so that we're all understanding some things that are familiar to us before going on to the Eastern view, if you like. So we can divide the mind in 4 parts, and or it's just a categorization, whatever you call it. I was struggling to find the word for it. So the conscious mind is the practical mind. So that's the cognitive mind in waking state, well, as we all are now, is the mind that, you know, we're thinking and everything else is happening there. So that's the one that we identify most with all the time. And also it's connected to the sense organs. So the sense organs, as you remember, that we've got 5 of them. So so the well, we've got the organs actually themselves, and then we've also got the faculty that associated with all of them. So we've got the physical eye, and then we've got eyesight. Okay, so we've got the nose, and then the sense of smell. So that's what I mean by these 2. And then we've got the tongue, and then taste, and then ears and hearing, and then we've got skin and touch. So these are the 10 senses, if you like. We've looked at those earlier on when we were talking about the physical body, the subtle body, etc. Um, and so therefore with the conscious mind, what we do is we interact with the outside world. So you're listening to me now and you're processing that information, and you are understanding what's going on. And so it's that interaction. And as you're hearing my voice, there is something that's happening to your mind. So it's just what's going on. And when we just seeing something, we just get attracted by it. So that's what we mean about interacting with the outside world and also with the inner world. And then there is, so before we go on to this, so the psychologists call this the cognitive mind, or about, it's all to do with cognition. And then we move on to the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is a reaction to the conscious mind. And it's also sometimes when something happens, we just don't have any control over it, and then we just have a reaction, right? Sometimes it could be something that we don't necessarily want to react that way, but we just do, right? So sometimes, I don't know if it's happened to you or just me, but sometimes if you find somebody is just slipped, I mean, you feel sorry for them, but then sometimes your first reaction is a bit of a laughter. So it's just a reaction that it's not, you just can't control that. That's your first thing that happens. So or you are in a very important meeting, and then you just see a spider that you're really afraid of, and then you can imagine what kind of noise you might make or what kind of words you might say. So these are like our reactions that we don't have very much control over. And in our subconscious mind, there is, it's manifested at all our likes and dislikes. So these are the things that we kind of sometimes say it's a little bit of our personality, what we like, what we don't like. And also, so I think I've just repeated that point, so which is about the subconscious mind. So it safeguards our needs and emotions and our growth, and it doesn't care for manners at all. So it's not it's just the first reaction. And we cannot block the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind are things that sometimes you might be thinking about something and you're like, oh my god, how can I just think that? I'm hoping that you have these things as well. It's not just me, but so so these are the sort of things that the conscious mind does, and we all know that we can't do anything about it when it happens, and it's just the way it is. And obviously there are also some really good things about the subconscious mind is well, it kind of makes us breathe. It makes it keeps our body going and doing a lot of things without us doing anything about it. I mean, imagine if we had to consciously breathe all the time, then that's not going to work, is it? We need to sleep at some point. So yeah, so the subconscious mind is all this. So in the Western context, for psychologists, sometimes people kind of associate the subconscious mind with the self, or also with the inner voice. So sometimes people use this, your inner voice and your subconscious, and this is kind of sometimes wrongly identified as the self, and we know that that's not the case from previous courses for various reasons that we can discuss later on. So the inner voice is not really the self. The self doesn't think, doesn't tell you anything. The consciousness, or if you like, the self is just there witnessing what's going on, and that's it. So so we were talking about earlier on that we cannot block the subconscious, but actually we can change the subconscious, but it takes a very, very long time with a lot of practice. So when things are connected to our core emotions, they go straight to our subconscious mind. Okay, so now, if in the middle of this lecture I just name one of you and I said, oh, you're a fool, and this is something that would that you feel offended about, then that will just click, in a way that it will go straight to your subconscious, and you will not listen to any other word that I say. Okay, just because it is something that really hurts you, and then it goes straight to the subconscious, because what I've done there is just hit what we call a core emotion. And similarly, sometimes, when people tell us something that's really, that we don't want to hear, or something that's really rude, or something that's really offended us or hurt us, then that goes straight to the subconscious. And that is something to bear in mind, and also to kind of be aware of when we are exposed to these kind of things about what's happened there. So, oh, it's a core emotion that's been hit, and that's why it's offended me, but should it or should it not? So we're going to go into these things a little bit more next week, but I just wanted to raise this with you so that you understand the difference between the subconscious mind. So it's not just, I mean, obviously it also, if something terrible is said to us, then we will think about it all the time. So it will affect our cognitive mind, but it will also go to the subconscious mind straight away as well. So and that is something to watch. So therefore, in trying to kind of cultivate in us qualities that we want, qualities that serve us, then what we need to be doing is we need to be feeding that subconscious. So the subconscious is where we want to work on. And then to be able to feed that subconscious is is where we kind of do things at a more a day-to-day level, if you like. Is like, if somebody has said, oh, you fool, and then you'll be like, okay, that doesn't define who I am. That is not who I am. That doesn't define me. Just because somebody thinks that, it doesn't actually make me a fool. So it is kind of working with these, so that then you can feed your subconscious with the right information, and saying, well, no, I am this person, I am this, and I am I am bliss, I am, I'm perfect as I am, and all these kind of things that would kind of work against. And when you do it very, very well, then that kind of goes into the subconscious as well. And similarly, any spiritual practice that we do it with a lot of joy, with a lot of emotion. And we can't be, if we're doing something very seriously and we want it to go to our subconscious, we can't be on our mobile phone at the same time, right? So, because that doesn't work. So we want 100%, or everything that you've got to be focused in there. So similarly, sometimes in yoga classes, I kind of say, just switch off from everything and concentrate on what you're doing. And as you do that, that kind of those words, those feelings that you get of being really peaceful when you're in a yoga class, well, I'm hoping, then all these actually go into the subconscious and kind of reprogram you, if you like, in some ways. So here I've just mentioned that in the dream state, the subconscious mind works. It is the one that works, and we have no control, right? So we can't really choose what we dream. So we can't program this sweet dream for tonight. So again, that's because it's the subconscious, and we have got no control over it, and that's how dreams work. So we'll come back to dreams in a little bit more time. So that's the subconscious mind that we kind of are a bit familiar with in describing those sense. And then the third mind is unconscious mind. So this is the bit where psychology is trying to understand, and they don't really understand what the unconscious mind is. And also they kind of say there is something behind. So there is something behind that's happening, but we don't know anything about it. And that's where the Eastern philosophy kind of has done a lot more research, and a lot more well, not research, but has got a lot more knowledge about this idea of what this unconscious mind is. We'll come back to this. And then there is something that's called superconscious mind. So I don't know if you've heard about this one. And again, so um, I remember seeing a documentary. I've tried to find it, but I couldn't. I'll try again. Where monks are kind of wired to various machines to try and detect their brain waves. So when we are kind of a bit sleepy, which we will be in a little while, so then the brain waves are kind of a bit dull and not too high frequency. And then when we are active, the frequency is high. And then and but and people who've got very well super conscious mind, quite active, the brain waves are very, very high, even though people are sitting very quietly and are doing absolutely nothing. So the brain is at such a level, where the mind is such a level that they can actually detect this, and science can actually um, detect the presence of these of the waves, though they don't understand why this is happening, but they know that something is happening there. And obviously they kind of attribute it to either meditation or spiritual practice or things like that. And so this is called the ultra cognitive mind. So so just so we understand that's what it is. So the mind really has got unlimited potential and abilities, and in the Eastern philosophy, it's really got absolutely unlimited abilities, and a lot of things that we kind of think are things that don't make sense or can be really, really difficult to explain, but actually it is all projection of the mind, and it is all very possible, and can be, a lot of it can be explained by simple by physics and by what's going on and how the mind is projecting all this. So it's quite fascinating. So now I just want to make the distinction between the brain and the mind. So the brain is the organ, and the mind is the subtle, is the subtle component of what's going on. Okay, so and well, what what um, what scientists understand is scientists do understand the brain. So sorry, understand the organs, but not how actually it all works. So 80% of the brains are unused. So we only use 20%, and at best. And then uh, and and um, um, so yeah, so then yeah, this is the point that people have made is really science doesn't understand these. And so Yoga Sutras, I have referred to it before. So it's a text by we think Patanjali, and that talks about how these 80 that how this we can use these 80% or remaining of power of the brain, and that's high level of spiritual practice, and that's going into levels, into very different levels. So I can talk about it a bit more next week, and or maybe in the questions section later on. So now I just want to move on to talk a little bit more about the Eastern explanation of all this mind stuff. And so I'm going to use this word, which is called a mind field component. So mind field is the whole thing, is not just the mind as we know it, as we've looked at, but it's the whole function. So sometimes it's called mind stuff, and in yoga philosophy it's called chitta. So everything which is in green on the slides, you don't need to know. It's just for those who have got a little bit of knowledge of Sanskrit, then that might make sense to you, but if not, don't worry at all about it. So mind field or mind stuff is the whole thing, is what I'm going to talk about. So here, I'm going to talk about the various components, or the various bits, if you like, and or the various functions of the mind field even. And the first one is the mind. So the mind, we all understand what it is. So it's a thinking organism. So we use it to think, sometimes a lot more than we should probably, but that's what we do. And also it's got the special function of converting sensation into perception, which is what I explained earlier on. So when you're hearing something, your ear, it goes into through your ears, and then you're processing that information in your mind. Then what it does is the mind connects the sense organs to the intellect. So we'll come back to the intellect in a bit more detail a bit later. And so when the mind is centered inside, the senses are blocked. Okay, so sometimes in asanas, I kind of say to you, close your eyes, and you know, even sometimes when we start, I say, you know, just while you're not hearing any noise, you're just focusing in such a way that you're kind of blocking any of these senses from from um, from outside. So that's what we mean by when the mind is centered inside. And also in asanas, if you want a deeper experience of the asanas, what we try to do is we try to disconnect from the senses. We try to disconnect from music or whatever. We just listen. And even in some ways, even me teaching is a distraction. So the best kind of asanas would be the ones that you do yourself. You just move, and you just it just comes naturally to you, or you just memorize whatever, but without somebody instructing you, because then you don't have to listen to me. You can just switch off from all these external things and really experience what's going on inside. And so again, I think I've already explained this point about the eyesight being part of the subtle body and the eyes being part of the physical body. And all this means, if you haven't done physical and subtle body with me, is just saying that, you know, the eyesight, you can't see the eyesight. It's not something visible, it's not something tangible, but you know it's there because you can all see what's going on, but you can't actually prove that. So um, then we're going to be, so I'm going to go through each one in detail, but so then there is the intellect, which we call buddhi in Sanskrit. And then there is the ego, which is ahamkara. So the ego has got quite a very different meaning here to what we think. In you know, so it doesn't mean egoistic or that kind of thing necessarily, but or directly, that is related but not exactly. And then there is memory, so how memory and the mind interact. And then something which I'll be calling subliminal imprints. So so I'll go through each one of these in detail. And subliminal imprints in Sanskrit are called vasanas, so that should be in green. So um, okay, so now thinking about the mind a little bit more, so I've talked about this, and so to also think about the mind is the mind um, projects any desire that comes, and the mind kind of works on how to fulfill it. So every time we kind of have a desire, we feel like we're hungry, and then you know we presumably have to get up to go and get something to eat and make something to eat. So basically it's just understanding that idea that all these thought waves that are coming through arise from a desire that we have, and we have endless desires. A desire is not a bad thing, it's just things that make us act. It's just something that, you know, um, to think of it this way. So and also in terms of desires, once we have a desire, the mind focuses on achieving it, and then it depends of how much we want whatever that we want, and the whole body kind of works, the whole works so that we actually can meet that desire. So basically that's how it works. So be careful what you desire, really, is is the idea here. So I'm going to talk about the intellect next. So the intellect is, if you like, intelligence, but not in the sense of IQ or anything like that, but the ability to discriminate some in the mind. And so first of all, you know, let's say you have a smell, so that hits your nose, and then your mind says, oh, there is a smell. And then the intellect starts thinking, oh, I know this smell. This is the smell of burnt toast, or something like that. So, you know, then the intellect starts kind of putting that into context, that gives you more information about what it is that you're experiencing. So then, so there is the discrimination about the type of smell, for instance, and then after you've discriminated, then it's like, then comes the judgment, right? So the judgment, oh, I love toast, or that smell of toast, I mean, it's a little bit burnt, but it's all right, I like it still, or maybe I don't like toast, or, you know. So then comes the judgment about that we will make of this. So the this is a little bit difficult to explain. So the intellect is directly related to the consciousness. So in the sense, so the consciousness, I'm just assuming everyone understands what this consciousness is. So it's, so consciousness is reflected in the intellect. So how, well, consciousness is just existence, is how we know we're here, how we know everything, and this is reflected in the intellect. And it is not, so consciousness is not the intellect, but it is reflected in the intellect, which is how we know that things exist. So so in the intellect, we can experience that we know something. So first and foremost, experience of consciousness for us comes in the intellect, in the form of I know something. Okay, so so everything that happens is because of consciousness. So otherwise there is nothing that happens. So otherwise we won't even know. There's no so everything happens because of consciousness, and then it is reflected in the intellect. So now to go a little bit deeper into this, so now that I know, let's say if we take the example of a flower here, so you see a flower and you say, oh, I know this flower, and you kind of start knowing the flower, and then the process of knowing is when it is completed, it becomes a memory. So once you've kind of know that this is a rose, and this is the smell from it, and once you've done this, then it goes into somewhere and it gets stored as a memory. So then next time when you see a rose or whatever, you'll know what it is, and you would have experienced it before. So to remember, we need a presented idea. So whatever we remember, it comes from something that we have experienced before, something that we have known before. Okay, so it's kind of a little bit related here. So experienced object, the experienced object kind of then becomes completes that process of knowing something. So in a way, one way to understand this is that for a child hasn't got any memories of, you know, if you're seeing something for the first time or whatever, they don't really know what this is. So the process of knowing for them would be very different, because there is no memory of that. They haven't experienced it so much, and they don't understand. They haven't got this power to discriminate and to judge it straight away necessarily. So so that's one way of looking at this as well. And I just thought I'll mention about animals. So animals have got intellect as well, but their intellect, of course, is very is not as developed as humans. So it's not saying, you know, it's not saying they don't have feelings. It's not like that. But their intellect, their discriminative power, is very is less developed than ours, for sure. And I think this is quite obvious. I mean, obviously they have got likes, they have got dislike, you know what they like, but in terms of the discrimination, um, this is much less developed in animals, and what animals do and their likes and their dislikes, and a lot of it is to do with instinct. Which is quite different from what it is for humans. Okay, so now we move on to ego, which is the third one. So we've looked at mind, we've looked at intellect in a little bit of, well, just briefly. And then now we move on to this idea of ego. So um, this idea of ego is a little bit difficult to understand, but what it means is what makes so what we've looked at before is we're all one, everything is one, and there is this consciousness that we all are part of, and everything is united, connected. But then this is not how we experience the world. We experience the world as being very different. Okay, so we are all really special. We've got curly hair, long hair, beautiful hair, shiny hair, and beautiful eyes, or black eyes, or we're all very, very different. So this idea of oneself being different from others is what is called as ego in the philosophy here. So it's kind of, we're all one, but then we somehow we kind of think that we are very different, which we are, but then it kind of takes us away from experiencing that oneness in what it is, and which is the whole practice that we want to do, to kind of experience that again. So the idea of oneself as different from others is what is termed as ego here, and the Sanskrit term for it is ahankara. Um, and also it kind of it is this idea of doership. It makes us feel that we are doing everything, and makes us want to act, etc. And one and it comes, I mean, as we grow up, as we go through life, the identification grows and grows even more. And also, one way to understand the level of identification is just to look at extremes in our society. So there are people who kind of like tyrants, or people who've got a very, very strong ego on one hand, and identify them as being so different from everything, and just in a world of their own. And then you've got on the other end, on the other end of the spectrum, if you like, you've got people who kind of just um, feel that they're really part of all this. And I think I've mentioned this example before, and I mean, I'm sure there are others, but somebody like Mother Teresa, for instance, who kind of dissociates from everything, but then acts as if everything is for the greater good, and everything is so that is, if you like, these two extremes. And then there is all of us in the middle, where we kind of somewhere there. So that it's not a bad thing. The ego is not a bad thing. It is we have to say who we are, and when we meet everyone, we have to kind of log in to our accounts on the computer with our we can't just say we're consciousness or whatever. We've got this identity that we carry in this lifetime, and that's what this is. So really, it is this function of I. The function of the mind field is the I-ness of everything. So just me, and this identification, if you like, is what is called the ego here. So it's, if you're not familiar with this concept, it's a little bit, different, but it will, you'll get it eventually. And so it is because of this ego that we kind of feel that we're different. So similarly, if we take the example of a very small child, and they don't have so much of an ego there because they don't know, they haven't got this new identity that they take when they're born in their new family, in their new role, whether they don't know whether they're a boy or they're a girl, and they don't identify them as that just yet when they're little, when they're just born, and they don't know, whether they're rich or poor, and all these, everything else is not there anymore. It's not there yet, basically. And as we go through life, these things get reinforced, and we get told who we are, and we kind of, these things get reinforced. Okay, so now moving on to the next function, which I've talked about briefly, which is the memory. So the Sanskrit term for this is smriti. And so this is memory, as we know it, is the retrieval of past experiences, right? So you've seen something before and then you remember. So that's all what we mean by memory. We remember or not. Okay, so and we use this, so don't worry about the terms that I've used so much, as long as you get the concept. So sometimes the memory is kind of stored somewhere in, somewhere there, but something jogs it, something kind of brings it back. So it is there in terms of, it is unmanifested, but then when something happens, then it manifests itself, and then we know it. So everything there in the memory is kind of the potency, or I've called it, or here, or the term that we use is, it's there as its unmanifested form. And then eventually, when we require to know something, then it comes back, and then we retrieve it, really. So again, here with the memory, so we all know that if we repeat something for a long time, it becomes a habit, it becomes a seed there, and then you're more likely for it to come back to come back to you in the waking state, or when we are kind of awake and thinking, etc. So again, there is this idea of repeating something, and we all know that. I mean, the more we kind of listen to something, watch something, the more that gets imprinted there, and it becomes a memory. I mean, the first time you see it, it might not register just yet. So I've explained this point about where it requires a stimulation so that it comes to us. So dreams, let's go back to dreams. So dreams are actually a replay of memory. So this is what dreams are. So it is things that have been stored, our imprints, and then they come and make a drama in our mind, and a display in our mind. So that's all replay of memory that's coming. So sometimes well, in dreams, these memories kind of all come together, and they're sometimes quite disjointed, because we don't really know why they're coming, what association. Sometimes, I don't know if you've had that, but like I would remember something from my childhood in Mauritius, but with people that I know now in this country, in that dream, but they weren't there. So it's all memories that kind of all get a little bit jumbled up, and that's what happens. But then so that's what happens in the subconscious mind. But in the conscious mind, when these memories come, they kind of make a little bit more sense to us, because then we can piece things together a little bit more when memory comes in the conscious mind. So in the So in the subconscious mind, when memory comes in terms of dreams, most of us have got no idea what this is saying. I mean, some people do, but most of us don't have a clue. And that's why. It's because it's coming from various imprints, and they're all kind of jumbling up, if you like. So that's why we're like, oh, this was so weird, the dream we've had. And it is weird, but it's nothing too surprising in a way. Okay, so now there's lots of text here, and I do apologize. So now the next one is subliminal imprints, and the Sanskrit word here is vasanas. So I will say vasanas just because subliminal imprint is a bit of a mouthful, so you know what I mean. So basically, what subliminal imprints are the things that have gone to the subconscious and the unconscious mind through various things that have happened in the past. And but the tendencies and the imprints that are dominant in this life are our vasanas in this life. So basically, they determine what we like, what we don't like, and our personality. And also, taking that example of small children, and when sometimes when when the child is really small, we kind of say, oh, they've got their little personality already. And it's just, so where does that come from? That doesn't come from, from us as mothers, or it's not. It comes from their own, their own imprints that have happened over time in past lives. So that's where all these come from. So um, so I'm just kind of going to go through a little bit, repeating myself a little bit here. So, well, the thought process starts in the conscious mind. Reaction comes from the subconscious mind and unconscious mind. And we know the imprints through our reactions. So how do we know that these imprints exist? Is because we react to some things and we don't know how, we don't know why. So it must come from something. I mean, there is always a cause to everything. It doesn't mean that we know what that cause is, but there is a cause. So through our reactions, we know that there are these vasanas, if you like, or that they come from various places. So my teacher talked about this North Indian tradition, about how people try to understand a child's life, past life. And what they do is they bring a lot of, so these are done to small children when they're quite young. So they bring a lot of objects to people, to this little child, and all sorts of things, books and musical instruments, and kind of weapons, and all sorts of things. And then the child will just go and already be drawn to something, and with that they can get a little bit of a picture of to understand why, the tendencies of that child. And these are actually, a lot of people say that they get a very good picture, and actually, and also that kind of determines where people are going in this life, and what their preferences are, what their tendencies are. And so it's just to kind of say that there is something that is very strong in us, that comes from these. So and the reason they can do that with children is because, rather than us, for us it's not going to work, because now we've just been programmed so much, that it will, things that we get drawn to might be because of things that we understand, that things that we would be very, very different. But for children who haven't been programmed or conditioned yet, where the mind is not developed, the intellect is not developed, the ego is not well developed, everything that they do comes from these imprints, or from these vasanas, if you like. So I don't think I'm going to go through some of these points that I have here, but I just want to talk about this point saying here. So what we use, what we use, we retain in our memory, and that's kind of stays with us. And also, addiction comes from imprints that have happened in things that have happened in the past, um, and well, when it comes to imprints, there is no discrimination, right? So these discrimination only happens in the intellect and not in terms of our vasanas. So in terms of the dominant tendencies in our lives, these are not things that you know, with in itself, they're not discriminative by nature, but the intellect then will have to come in to say, oh yeah, this is a good thing, or this is not a bad thing, but in themselves they are not. So to change an imprint takes a very, very long time. I mean, you know, it's been etched somewhere, and and um, probably etched is not a very good word, because it implies a physical thing, but it's not a physical thing at all. But so it takes a very long time to kind of change those, but they can be changed. And in the yoga philosophy, it kind of talks about the opposite practice, about doing a lot of opposite practice to what the vasanas are. And the other interesting thing to understand about the imprints is that in the imprints, there are um, the, there is no separation, in the sense that if we're talking about, so let's say, beauty in for the imprints. So the beauty of a flower is the same beauty that it's kind of like a feeling, is that just something which is not different when you are, let's say, the beauty of a flower, the beauty of a child, or you know, the beauty of an art piece, or all that. I mean, we kind of make that distinction of that beauty of, you know, but in terms of the vasanas for the imprints, there is no distinction. That it's one thing. Beauty is one thing. So it's not kind of object dependent. It's just this whole thing. And similarly, for the subconscious mind, love is just one emotion. But then in our conscious mind, love is like, oh, do you love me a lot, or a little bit, or you know. So there are all these was it love, is it puppy love, is it true love, or you know. So there are those kind of distinctions that we have in the cognitive mind. But then when we're looking at the subconscious mind, these all emotions, or these all concepts is just one, with no separation. Okay, so now the last bit that I want to talk about is the storehouse. So just remember that the vasanas, or the subliminal imprints, are the tendencies, if you like, or the habits that are dominant in this lifetime. Okay, so now there is we come with a lot of storehouse of imprints from thousands and thousands of births. So but the ones that are manifesting in this life are the vasanas. But then this whole storehouse of imprints is well, I'll call it storehouse now of imprints, but the Sanskrit word for it is samskara. So um, so the so this is where we store everything that we've ever done, and strong desires about future life, and you know, so my teacher used to say that, you know, if you really want something, then be careful of what you want, because if you want it enough, and you start thinking, well, actually I have to have this, or this needs to happen, then that might happen in future lives as well. So just be careful what you want. So the storehouse of imprints need to be understood in the sense that it's like a hard disk on a computer, except that it's one that never dies. Okay, so it's not one, it's not a Microsoft computer or whatever, it's just a one that never dies. So it's just there, everything gets stored there, and it stays with us from one lifetime to another. And so formatting of the hard drive is not possible. So for those who understand the term of formatting, so basically, if we feel that, you know, we probably have to delete something or negate something, it's not really possible. And there's one thing that I wanted to mention here is about suicide. So suicide is where people think, you know, they can put an end to what's happening, but in the Eastern sense here, we're saying, okay, you can do that, you could do that, but what it means is that if they are things that you need to go through, then you'll come back to fulfill those. So therefore it's just something to think about, is this this idea of things carrying on from for lifetimes and lifetimes, and that, you know, we think we can bring an end to it, but actually it doesn't. It is an end, but then it will have to continue if it's not been purged, or if it's not been you know how do I say, if it's not been fructified, or if it's not been, if things haven't been haven't had to take their natural course, shall we say. So therefore in yoga, people are encouraged to face up to problems, and there is this idea that there is no escape. And I mean, it doesn't sound like it's dire or anything like that, but it just means that, in a way, that you know, that when once we realize that there are problems, we need to face up to them. But then remember, we've kind of talked about this a lot before, saying that, yeah, but we're supported in all this as well, to kind of know that. So it's not just saying, oh yeah, you have to face your problems, but to also know that when we do that, we are very supported. Okay, so so I think here again, so yeah, so whatever we do goes to the storehouse of imprints. And again, if we want to kind of make it of get things that we want to kind of be imprinted in us, that we carry on, then there are things that we can do to kind of make sure that these, whatever we store on our hard drive, are things that are going to be helpful for us on our journey. So the last point I want to make here is that the unconscious impressions here come to the subconscious level as imprints, and then it becomes as memory, and then we remember it. So that's a little bit all I wanted to talk about today, but I just wanted to kind of just bring this diagram a little bit to you. So here, I mean, I'm not going to go in too much detail about this diagram. So all thought waves are here, and then so this is all the mind field, or the mind, if you like, and then these are all the functions on the side of the mind field. So we've talked about the conscious mind, the subconscious mind on the right, the subconscious, unconscious, and the superconscious. And then here, these are the ones that we talked about here, which is the mind, the intellect, the process of knowing, and then the ego, memory, imprints, vasanas, and samskara. And then above all that is the observer, who's witnessing everything that is actually happening. So that's what this this diagram is showing. So we've kind of looked at it individually, but I just wanted to kind of recap showing you this. And then finally, I think I'll just talk about this one, is this idea of manifestation of karmas from habitual impressions. So I've kind of reversed it now. So there is the deposit of habitual potencies. So these are our storehouse. That's the samskaras. And from there comes the vasanas, so what is the subliminal imprints of habits, skills, even skills which are dominant in this life. So this is the subconscious personality. And then there is the idea, so from these we can remember things, and then there is the arrow should go a bit both ways. And then there is all the desires that comes with this idea of doership and intellect and free will. And that's the desire for us to do things, and in Sanskrit this is called the icha shakti. And then finally, this once these things come, then they trigger us to do things so that we can then act. So basically, this is just the reverse of how of what I've kind of talked about. So I just want to say that everything comes from the mind field in terms of thought waves. And once we analyze and start understanding the thought process, we start, we are in a bit, we are more able to kind of control our thoughts and influence our subconscious in a way that we can use this to serve us. And also at a more kind of day-to-day level, it is good to understand the nature of short waves and how they can be temporary and affected by the outside world. And the nature of thought waves is we attach to them and identify with them. And whether we ought to or not is a different story. And also how we kind of, there is a tendency to identify with negative thought waves, and how we hang on to these thought waves and ruminate and just let them dominate who we are. And how once we've kind of understood all this about how the thoughts process work, etc., and then we can use in waking state the time that we have to kind of make auto suggestions and other things to change those imprints. So that is all that I wanted to say, and we will just finish here with a short prayer. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Just bear with me, I'm trying to stop the recording.